Hey, Shabbat shalom, everyone. It is great to be with you. And this week's Torah portion, it is Bamidbar. Bamidbar. I'll put it on the board. And what does that mean? Anybody in the house? Anybody in the house? What does Bamidbar mean? It means hints. Hints. It's getting close. Anybody, quick. I got in
Wilderness.
All right, thank you, Joy. It means in the wilderness. It's very important because where are we right now? Are we in the land
At
or
Life of Worship?
are we outside the land?
We're at Life of Worship.
Anything outside the land is the wilderness. We're at Life of Worship. Thank you, Sandy. You're so smart.
Hey, but we have other news that everybody needs to know
What's some
about.
other news?
Big John and Tracy got our sign up.
Yeah.
It says Life of Worship in front of our building. It's wonderful. Thank you, Big John and Tracy.
It was so awesome. And he was very efficient. He put that up in no time.
Well, it is what he used to do. He's super smart that way.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, he did great. He did great. He really did a good job. In fact, he took our old letters, and there were some that were cracked, and he fixed those. And then he scuffed them all down, and then he painted them, and so that they would match all the other signs on the building, like the landlord wants. And then he did the stencil, because they're individual letters, so you have to do a stencil before you put it up. And he rolled it all out there, taped it up on the side, and then drilled it all in. It was kind of chilly yesterday morning with a nice little breeze out of the north, and he and Tracy got that thing up. And
They were here bright and early.
Bright and early, yeah. They did a good job.
If y'all are listening, I was hoping to see Tracy this morning, but if they're listening online.
There she is. Yeah, right there.
Tracy, we miss you. Was hoping to see you live.
But we saw your sign.
But I'll have you this way.
Tracy's recovering.
That's true. Oh,
She sprained her ankle
Did you see?
really bad. Well, no, I mean, she didn't show me her leg, but she was hobbling. I was like, what in the world did you do? And she told me the story.
yep, I knew
Yeah.
that. I have pictures.
Oh, you have pictures?
Yeah.
Well, I was like,
Yeah,
ow.
she's been down for 2 weeks, so.
Oh, I sprained my ankle a lot when I
Sorry,
was a
we're
kid.
talking about you live, Tracy.
Yeah, and you're not here to defend yourself. You can just type it in. That's all you can defend yourself, or unless you call, and then we can put you on speakerphone. Oh, I have another announcement, by the way. And if you follow us on the Life of Worship Ministries YouTube channel, like those of you who are joining us right now, I put up a new separate playlist this week that only contains the Walking in Spirit and Truth Enoch series. The Enoch series. So if you have not been following along on Tuesday evenings on Lamb Network, then you can go to our Life of Worship Ministries YouTube channel and go to the playlist for the Walking in Spirit and Truth Enoch series. I think I've done 5 parts. 5 parts. So it's still easy enough to get caught up on. Just your leisurely listening. Having a lot of fun with that. This last week it was on the throne and the evil spirits. Yeah. Yep. In fact, it's there in this last week is where the spirits of the giants would be condemned to roam the earth. Isn't that something? Yeah. So, y'all may want to go back and check that out. Okay, shameless plug. Numbers. We need to pray. So, who would like to? Oh, Sandy?
You had me last week.
Sandy would like to pray. I'll pray. She's got her hands full right now. Father, we just come before you right now in the name of Yeshua. And how we just honor you today. And we just magnify you because we love you, and we're not here just to promote anything other than to promote you and what you're doing and what you're doing in the earth and what you're revealing to us and the different ways and the methods and the tools and that you provide, and so that our hearts will be opened up, our minds will be enlightened, our eyes will be able to see, we'll be able to hear things we've never heard before, in order that we can connect with what you are speaking to your people. So, Father, we just come to you and we just ask you that you would plow the soil of our hearts so we're able to receive your word, the seed of your word, and that, Father, through this, that we are elevated into your presence so that when we depart from the Torah portion, we go into worship, that we are already elevated just to worship you with all of our heart, with all of our mind, with all of our soul, with all of our strength. And these things we just offer to you in the name of Yeshua. Amen.
Yeah.
We're doing it this week, and we're moving on into Numbers, into Bamidbar. And Numbers is now, we just had this, you know what basically we have this whole journey that's been going on since Shemot. Actually since Genesis. But, this whole Exodus journey since Shemot, and we went through there, and it got out of Egypt, went through all the plagues, and we built the tabernacle. And then it's like we have this little interlude. And this little interlude feels like it took several weeks and months to go through, and that was called Vayikra, Leviticus. We went through that whole book, and the third book of the Torah, and now we're going into Numbers, and so it's like the journey begins again. It's like we have this little interlude. We put some things into place. We have to have a lot of those. We have to have the foundations of Leviticus to be able to understand the rest of the Torah. That which came before and the stuff that comes afterwards. It really it's the glue. It's that connector. It's that vav. Maybe it hooks everything together and pulls it in. And then now we go into Numbers, or Bamidbar as it is in the Hebrew, and we start with a census, and we start with some numbers and some counting and some polling and some, the shekels, and we have, the description of all these families and clans and tribes. And why is that important? I mean, because after all, we had all these people leave, but we never really took account. We just said these are the sons of all these others that went out and left the land of Egypt, along with this mixed multitude. But here we get this numbering, and some accounting going on, and yet there's still some connections that we need to make. So I would like for someone to read. Now, I'm not going to...
Read what?
I would like us to go to Numbers chapter 1. Numbers chapter 1, Bamidbar chapter 1.
Are you really going to have somebody read all those names?
No, we're not going to go through all the names. But I would like for you to read verses 1 through 4. Someone read verses 1 through 4.
Now Yehovah spoke to Moshe in the wilderness at Sinai in the tabernacle of meeting on the first day of the second month in the second year after they had come out of the land of Egypt, saying, Take a census of all the congregation of the children of Israel by their families, by their fathers' houses, according to the number of names, every male individually, 18 years old and above. All who are able to go to war in Israel, you and Aaron, shall number them by their armies, and with you there shall be a man from every tribe, each one the head of his father's house.
Okay, now we take a pause from that. And then the next thing, what I'd like for you to do is jump down to verse 16 and 16 through 20. No, 16 through 19.
These were chosen from the congregation, leaders of the fathers' tribes, heads of the divisions of Israel. Then Moshe and Aaron took these men who had been mentioned by name, and they assembled all the congregation together on the first day of the second month, and they recited their ancestry by families, by their fathers' houses, according to the number of names from 20 years old and above, each one individually, as Yehovah commanded Moshe. So he numbered them in the wilderness of Sinai. 20?
No, because now it's going to start going back into the tribes again. So just as Yahweh had commanded Moses, so he numbered them in the wilderness of Sinai. So we have a fulfillment of the word. They're following the instructions. They're supposed to figure out how many men, what type of men?
Ready to go to war.
20 years old and upward.
20 years old and upward. And
That
men
can go to war.
that can go to war, right? Okay, so I think that's very, very important. So we get, these are the numbers that we're looking at. And peculiarly,
Just go with it.
yeah, the women and the children are not mentioned in the count. And why? Because one of the things, so think about this. They don't go to war, right? And then another thing is that yet women and children and men and the elderly all have a value, right? Because it wasn't in one of the most recent Torah portions that we just went over that each person has a value, and so a one that is ready for war has a particular amount of value, and in terms of this is we're going to put a dollar amount to it. Then this person has this dollar amount to it. A woman has this type of value. A child has this much value, and an elderly, a man over the age of 60 has this much value. Does that mean that the people have one person has less value over another before y'all? No.
I guess militarily you do.
Yeah. So in I guess in terms of the productivity or somebody, maybe there's a tie to that. But in essence, but when you're actually taking a census, do you count the heads or do you count something else? You count the shekel, right? So if you want to get a head count, you don't do what David did. David counted heads and then brought a curse. He didn't count the shekels.
Well, you only do what Yah tells you to do.
And he didn't, yeah, he was not supposed to take a census anyway. So, because why? Why would you?
When you count, it's generally to go to war. And so when David's counting, he's relying on the strength of man to go to war instead of Yah to win the war.
I wonder if that's one reason why there's a connection with that one psalm that says, men will trust in chariots, but we will trust in the name of Yehovah, right? So we don't want to count. We don't want to trust in the number of chariots or tanks or airplanes or jets or nuclear missiles or anything like that.
Any of our own abilities are nothing.
I know.
Trust in Him.
Doesn't that give you concern, like current events today? I mean, we're like, well, look how many tanks and stuff. Look at the production of this country over this country and how many artillery shells they're making. And it's like, it's really unnerving when you constantly get that stuff put in front of you. And nevertheless, we being the people of Yah, doesn't it just makes that much more sense how we separate ourselves? Say, yeah, we're a citizen of the United States or of Canada or whatever. And it's like, are we just not citizens of the kingdom that happen to be born in a particular country? So it allows us to be able to disconnect a little bit. But we're still given the responsibility to be part of our communities and a part of our nation. And when we don't like what we see going on, to voice that to those that represent us in our governments and say, it's really not smart. And the voice of the populace does make a difference. And I will say it does, even though sometimes it feels like it doesn't. So, very important. That's just a little thing that I just always think about. Am I doing my part? Am I being part of that collective voice that says, y'all pull in the reins, like turn this ship around? Okay. So let's go back and are y'all ready to put your thinking caps on?
Yes,
All right. It's so quiet in the house.
sorry.
Okay, we're good.
Okay.
So, Bamidbar, in the wilderness, it's a phrase. It's a phrase, and it comes from a couple of different roots. In the wilderness, Bamidbar. So, as you can see, it has the bait there at the beginning and the midbar. And did you know that this can also, the midbar, can also mean mouth?
Yes.
Mouth. Sandy's got a good memory. She remembers what she preached. Okay, so it can mean mouth. So in the wilderness, or can we say the mouth? In the mouth? What do you mean in the mouth? Okay, so we're gonna break that down a little bit. The Midbar breaks down. Look up here at this. So we have the mem, and so we have a bait that's sitting over here. Then we have a mem, and then we have this word right here, debar. So what does the mem represent? So the mem can represent a whole bunch of
The
different
mem
things.
can represent a womb. It can represent waters of chaos or waters of living waters that flow. So in general, oftentimes it is remembered as chaos, but we should never forget that the wilderness is a womb where the children grow. So
So kind of like a gestation period. Something like that. You know, it's a long gestation period, 40 years. How would you like to carry a baby for 40 years?
no,
No?
no.
But it does mean that the Father's doing something, because how many different times do we see 40 years? 40 years means something.
40 years generally is trial and testing.
Trial and testing. Yeshua
40.
Yeshua was in the wilderness for 40 days. What else do we have with the 40s? We have 40 days and nights. Okay, so we have, this stems from the mem prefix, which indicates that from or out of an open womb. And then we have debar. And what does that mean? Does anybody know what the meaning of that word is?
Yes.
How about word?
Means to speak, declare, converse. And it can also be pronounced devar with a
Devar.
vav.
Yeah.
Not with a vav, but it's a bait, but it's the V sound.
It has a V sound on it, right?
Depending on whom you're speaking with. And it is, the devar is the promise, the devar, the word, the promise word. The promise word is Yeshua. And so, if you're talking about the place of chaos or the place of the womb, the waters that bring life or the waters that bring destruction, and that's where they are, is in the wilderness, then everybody else is going to look at this wilderness and see something that's maybe negative, but in reality, if the word is in the wilderness, then it's our attitude. It's how we want to view our wilderness.
Okay, those are some good points, really good points. Anybody else have some other thoughts? How about just this idea that the mouth as the origin of the word? So what are we birthing from our mouth? Or in the wilderness, what was birthed? What word was coming forth from the mouth of Yah?
Or in the wilderness is where Yah's word is tested within us.
His word is tested.
His word, our word, et cetera, et cetera. Do our words line up with His word during the test?
So that's a really good point, because how many times do we say, did God really mean that? Do we not have that same serpent whispering in our ear? Does God really mean that? Did He really say that?
Well, Hasatan actually said those
I know,
words,
but in the wilderness is where, we know that it was Adam and Mrs. Adam that were challenged with that phrase, but that was in the garden. What happens when the serpent was in the garden? What happens when you go in the wilderness? It's in Bamidbar, in the wilderness, when the serpents came out and started biting the people. So think about, there's an abundance of serpents that are out there that are using their mouth to bite and snap at us in order to poison the truth of Yah that wants to be heard, and yet to taint that word, to cause that word to be polluted, to be poisoned within us. And when that word begins to be diluted or mixed, that poison comes into our bloodstream, what does it do to our life source? Our life source, life is in the blood. Our life begins to die. So in the wilderness, we have a choice to see whose word we're going to allow to birth within us. Okay, so, and yeah, Tracy says human gestation time is 40 weeks. Very good point. Very good point. Let's see. All right, so now, we've been talking a lot about how these Hebrew words connect with numbers. And this Hebrew word for Bamidbar is 248. 248 shows up several different times. And so we're going to see this in the theme today. Did you know? And so in other words, why are we looking at numbers? Not to get confused, not to say, oh, how'd you get that number?
Because
Where'd it come
every
from?
letter, bottom line is every letter is a number and a letter in Hebrew writing. Therefore, since Yah, it says, it's the glory of Yah to conceal a matter. It's the honor of kings to search it out. So that we'll search things out so that we can further, do we have to? No. But if we want to know more, if we want to connect more, if we want to have more understanding, then we are going to search out in every way. We're going to search out the words. We're going to search out the letters. We're going to search out the numbers. We're going to search out the relating families. We're going to do that to bring further understanding to what he's trying to say, because he did not write it in a form that just blah, 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 where we all can get it. No, he wants to see who's hungry enough in the wilderness with their mouth a live, or will they live on his word and really discover what he said? Who's hungry enough to go search it out?
Deeper meaning.
So think about it this way. I like how you said that, Sandy. That's perfect.
Yeah.
And so think about the number. So a lot of times we think about the word, or we think about the letter. But do you ever think about using the number of the value? So the value of Bamidbar is 248. Using that value 248 as a pivot to other words that are similar to it. So if it pivots to Bamidbar, how about if it pivots to another word that we're all very familiar with? It happens to be the name of the patriarch, Abraham, Avraham. So if 248 then is connecting us in the wilderness, 248 is also connecting us with our father Avraham. And
Okay, so the wilderness is connected to Abraham.
yeah.
We need to think about it. So the word is connected to the wilderness, is connected to Abraham, because the word came to Abraham. He is the one that carries the promise, but was told they would go to the wilderness, to Egypt, in order for that to happen.
Yeah. And right now, so in these first 4 chapters of Bamidbar, or of Numbers, there's an in-depth count of all of these tribes, the clans and the heads of the tribes, and the number of fighting men that are in the tribes. I mean, it's like, okay, all right, there's Reuben, and there's Zebulun, and there's, we're going through all these different numbers. And think now, if we're looking at what connects it in the wilderness, and immediately we have the census going on, is saying, look, you all that are with us right here in the wilderness are connected to Abraham.
Come on.
Where are we? We're in the wilderness.
Amen.
Well,
We by our choosing can choose to align with our father Abraham. There was the Yeshua actually confronted the Pharisees. He said, you're not following, your father's not Abraham. And they, wait a minute, our father is Abraham. So, well, you're not doing what Abraham's doing.
I think it's real important, if you're bringing up 248, though, to remember, if we're going to bring in phrases and words that match, and we're talking about the wilderness, Kol Yahweh or Yehovah Elohim, the voice of Yahweh Elohim is 248. So when we're looking at the voice, it's going to be present in the wilderness. The word is going to be present in the wilderness. Mm-hmm. Our words will make known who we serve in the wilderness, but it's also where we're taken to the wilderness, that place of what you said earlier, the mouth. We're taken there because the word is declared over us, or declared to us, or we declared the word ourselves, and so that we can have an encounter. Because what is our greatest desire? Our greatest desire is to have an encounter with the voice. Well, we need to learn to encounter him in the wilderness where it might not just be, where we're right there living with him, which it will be one day. But when we learn to encounter the voice in the wilderness, because that's where he's speaking, his word is declared in the wilderness, and then we will understand how we're to walk, and that the voice speaks, and how are we changed? We should be changed when we're in his presence. We should be changed when we are with his word, the voice. We should never be the same. And that's what it's supposed to be. Every time we encounter Yeshua, where we are at, because we're in the wilderness, we should be changed. We should be different than before. Kol Yahweh Elohim, the voice of Yahweh Elohim. That's equal to the wilderness, the voice.
Yeah.
Abraham.
Yeah. Mace says on here, he says, in the wilderness we have no choice but to turn to him for life. And that's exactly right. Then also connected to this 248, guess what? There's another word. It's the Hebrew word, rechem. Rechem. Did you know that it connects us here? What are we talking about over here? This mouth, this Bamidbar, which also can mean the mouth, which connects us with the womb. Well, rechem, it means womb and belly, or belly. The place where that fetus is developed, where the baby is developed and exits at birth. So we have a connection again with this ram. So it kind of gives, now if you put these together, we're talking about how the waters of chaos and this flowing river. Mem has to do with that whole idea of water. It also has the idea of the concept of the flowing of the blood. We have an idea that in the wilderness can be this place. It infers a place that to boil up and to foam, to be troubled, as in the waters, having troubled waters, and it's connected to the womb. Think what happened in Rivka's womb. What was going on in Rivka's womb? There was a battle going on between two brothers, and those two brothers would be two kingdoms that were fighting in the womb, troubled waters of the womb.
There's a song about that.
Yeah, so makes you wonder then when Yeshua was talking to those rabbis and they said, well, you're not of your father Abraham. Why would he say that other than that they were not of Israel? That they were converts and they were trying to force a new religion upon the people. I say new religion. For the last 100 years, they have been forcing this religion, which they call the oral traditions. Do you know an oral tradition is just whatever they make up and then they end up putting it in writing? That's what it is. Because the rabbis say that whatever they agree to, even God must bow his knee to. So we have to kind of keep in mind what we want to stick to is the Word. The Word that was what? Birthed in us, in the wilderness, that comes straight from the Father's mouth. Yeah. Isn't it good that we're able to stay together? Because how many times do we come together for our Torah portions and we go through a lot of different things, but then there's these aha moments. And it's like it might not even be something that we were talking about and studying out from a particular outline or whatever we're using for study notes. But it's like, oh, and all of a sudden you're sitting there and you're connecting dots. And you want, oh, I'm connecting dots with this and that and the other, because that's the revelation of the voice of Yah in the wilderness. For each one of us individually, but also as a congregation, as our friends and family gathered together. So, this, by the way, in Numbers chapter 1, is the 118th chapter of the Torah. So we've gone through 118 chapters, plus 3 others that are here. 118. I think my board's getting a little crowded, but I'm going to put 118 right here. Well, what is 118 connected with? Okay, there is a Hebrew word, and I'm going to phonetically write it up here. It's Beni Nu. Benny Nu. It's actually, I believe it's a name. It's like it's a proper name
It is.
of somebody.
That's
Benny
what I
Nu.
was thinking.
Benny Nu. Yeah, like Benjamin, but here we have Benny Nu. It means our son. Benny Nu.
In Israel, I think they use that now.
Yeah, and so that is the value of Benny Nu. It's like, well,
Benny Nu.
what does that have to do with? We're gonna so keep that number in mind because we're gonna kind of parse it out here and look at it. Also, in this first verse of Numbers 1:1, there are 70 letters. Now, isn't this interesting because we get the value of these different words, but the actual number of letters in the verse? Do you ever think that that Yah is trying to say something as we dig into those nice little treasures that it's like there's 70 letters? Would that mean something? Well, what have we talked about in the past about 70? So keep in mind we got our son, but 70 relates to a number of things. But what is 70?
It's good because it's a 7.
How many heifers would they
Oh.
sacrifice during Sukkot? And 70 representing the nations. So this goes
70 disciples.
There's a bunch of
70
seven.
disciples. Okay. What else do we have related to 70s?
70 left to go to Egypt, didn't they?
70 went down to Egypt.
Sends out 70 disciples, 70. The 12 becomes 70.
The 12 becomes 70. Okay. So think about this. If you have some other thoughts, go ahead and add them. In that, so who, as we begin in this Bamidbar, and it's starting to address to whom is this written? To whom is it written, and who's speaking it? So that first verse. Then Yahweh spoke to Moshe in the wilderness of Sinai in the tent of meeting, on the first of the second month, on the second year, after they had come out of the land of Egypt, saying. Now, he's giving Moshe instructions to whom? The sons of Israel, the sons of Jacob. So now we have an idea that these 70 letters could also be pertaining to the house of Jacob through the mouthpiece of Moses.
But yet, that makes sense because let's just trace it back. We have the wilderness, the word connected, Abraham connected, and what do we have with Jacob? Jacob is part of Abraham. So in reality, it's all connected together. It's one family that has become a nation.
So we're starting to see.
And 70 represents the nations.
So we're starting to see this thematic connection now in the wilderness, something between the voice of Yah, the words that come from Yah, the words that we receive, that which is birthed in the people. Because in here, you see this orderly array of how they set up their tents around the tabernacle. Right? And when the people, if you were to get up and say, okay, look at all this. If you're down in the middle of the camp, all you're doing is seeing rows of tents, right? Everywhere you look, there's rows of tents.
It's circular.
But if you were to elevate yourself a little bit, and then you look down, it's like, oh my goodness, it's a nation. This is a nation. It begins to release a picture. And did you know that the number 70 is related to a particular Hebrew letter? How about the ayin? The ayin.
Discernment.
Yeah. To see,
Revelation.
to perceive. It enables us to see Abraham as the father of the nation. When the people, if they were, they can't go up on the mount, right? I don't know if the boundary markers were not allowed. They weren't allowed to go up.
But I don't know necessarily that they're beginning to see Abraham as the father. They already know that. They're beginning to see Yah as the father or the ruler of the nation.
That's good. And then it's all of a sudden they see, if you like to go up to a high place and look down, look at this nation that Yah is the father of, or look at all of these descendants of Abraham. Now, what are we perceiving? what are we seeing here? We're seeing something miraculous that took place
Unfolding,
because
yeah.
all of these people came out of Egypt, this array of people that were somehow linked one another with their families and with their clans and with their tribes. And
some weren't linked at all,
And some weren't linked at all, but they...
except by adoption.
And now they've all come together under this one banner. And as we saw in the connection of this on the 118th chapter of the Torah, that 118, and it's connected to our son. And now you can take it in the generic form as, here are the sons of Israel, the children of Israel, or you can look at it as, there is one that out of Israel will be the Son of the Most High. So we have a prophetic implication, a messianic implication as well with the 70.
It's part of the puzzle
It is part of the puzzle.
that he's put before us.
So now put all these pieces together. Let's maybe get some more inferences to it. That Yahweh is bringing Israel to the place where the seed can be implemented into the womb, and at a time of troubling, like Jacob's trouble, bring forth Beni Nu, our son. So, did you ever think that out of all this that we have, and all the listing of all these names, and the numbers and stuff, that it's really saying, what's happening in the wilderness? Was the wilderness an easy place? It's a place of trouble, a place of foaming, of chaos, they're having to, you think about this, they had to learn to break from Egypt. Don't you think that was a turmoil? Because many people had to deal with, 40 years we talked about it. How long did it take to get Egypt out of the people? It took a whole generation. It's troubling for them to say, what? Wait a minute, we don't need a golden calf? Our fallback?
But see, I believe that the wilderness, it is a place of testing. It is a place where your faith is going to be worked, but it's going to bring the revelation of whose you are and whom you trust in. But the wilderness, and you've heard me say this for decades, but a lot in the last, 10, 15 years, is that a wilderness that you are in is how it is how you make it. It can be a dry, barren, desert, horrible place to be, or it can be lush, full of life, etc., because it's going to depend on the words that come forth from your mouth. It's going to depend on how you perceive. It's going to depend on how you look at the circumstances. Is it opportunity or is it drudgery? Is it a place where you encounter the voice, the voice that walks in the garden, the voice that wants to encounter you, the one who's speaking and bringing forth revelation and discernment, through the one that's bringing us as a people into one nation, and it's full of life because we trust in Him who provides every one of our needs, so we don't need to worry, we don't need to fret. Or do we perceive it where it's constantly full of worry? And if that's the answer, then if we were examining our true faith in the wilderness, we truly don't trust Him. We still trust in the chariots and the horses of man. We trust in the way man does things. We trust in the way that others perceive things, and we get along their boat. We jump on their boat and their wagon, and we follow along with that, and through grumbling and complaining, and it's because we have become so clouded in vision because we no longer have eyes of discernment. We aren't truly listening to the voice, we're following the voices of others in the wilderness, and therefore, since we don't trust in Him, it has become a dry, barren place that's lifeless, that's one tragedy after the next, instead of, hey, there's trials and testing, but it's the opportunity for Yah to make Himself known and for His miracle power to be shown. So are we walking through a lush, beautiful wilderness that full of trials and testing? Are we with opportunity? Are we walking through the dry, barren desert place that's full of no life whatsoever? That's drudgery, and it's depending on the voice we listen to. our own voice, the voice of the people, or the voice of Yah and His Word? Because our attitude and the way we perceive the wilderness is going to show whom we really trust in. The chariots and the horses, man, or Yahweh.
There you go. Jackie.
It is a purpose, the word purpose. And that, our English language has been so messed with over the years. But back in the day, just a single word told the whole story. There is a purpose in the wilderness. There is a reason for the wilderness. There is a testing in the wilderness. There's a mikvah in the wilderness. There is a holiness in the wilderness. There is a purpose. There's a reason.
Yeah, exactly. There is a purpose, absolutely. And I wanted to mention this. Joe put in here in her comment, said, likened to a baby in a womb, it hears its parent's voice, and then after 40 weeks born, and with their parents, as we are in the womb, we hear his voice, yet not with him yet. So there are some messianic. Actually, there's 3 different prophetic connections, by the way. So
That's what's good about Hebrew. It gives you different,
because
words.
we're thinking about these 40s. They're these 3 areas of the 40 years later, Israel enters the promised land. I mean, think about this. It's only been 1 year. In the course of 1 year, they've built a tabernacle. We had a whole bunch of instructions given to them. And now we're here. It's just now on the 2nd month.
Mm-hmm.
Just starting the 2nd year out of Egypt. I mean, that's not a long time at all. I mean, think about, what were you doing last year in May?
If we didn't have all the distractions we have today, no telling where we'd be.
It's true.
But aren't we supposed to have those distractions and push through them?
That's true too, yes, but I mean, if they weren't there, and we have to have them because humans are humans. But I mean, he might be here already.
So we have 40 years later, Israel enters the promised land. 40, right? 40. At 39 years later at this point, but it's a 40-year period. Then, at the first coming of Messiah, so think about that. When they enter the promised land, it is they're going in with whom? Joshua, a type and shadow of Yeshua, leading them into the promised land. So we also have this picture of the first coming of Messiah, 40 years in the wilderness, 40 days in the wilderness. Lastly, at the end of the age, it also gives us the picture, because what are we talking about? The seed that came into the earth. So now we have this seed of people going into the land. We have Yeshua, that is the promised seed that comes into the land, right? Right? Birth from the womb, and comes into the land. And then at the end of the age, that comes with a Jacob's trouble, right? And I think, personally, history repeats itself, or you can say this, there's been more than one Jacob's trouble. You can look at it throughout generations, say,
yes,
that's a Jacob's trouble, that's a Jacob's trouble, this is a Jacob's trouble. Well, are we in for another round of Jacob's trouble? But this Jacob's trouble, according to Matthew 24, will be much bigger than the rest of it. And it's about birthing something. It comes through turmoil. The turmoil of the womb produces what? The final or the second coming of Yeshua as it bursts in the Messianic age. Mm-hmm. Yes? Or
Put
that.
in the comments that she wants you to read Romans 5, 1 through 5.
Okay, Romans 5, 1 through 5. Let's go over and read that. And Romans 5, 1 through 5.
We are getting ready to get into another trouble. Okay, let's go.
We are. I mean,
It's coming.
let me just add something. Did you realize that a week from this past Thursday was 40 days since the solar eclipse was completed across America? So we had 3 solar eclipses. The first one, or you can just call the 2 that fully crossed the continent. The third one was a partial crossing. So what? 40 days. 40 days of repentance that Jonah gave Nineveh, that Yah gave through Jonah to repent, and if it didn't repent, then judgment would come. Well, did America repent after the sign of the Tav? After the sign of the covenant? This is the sign of my covenant, crossing this country. You are a covenant nation, and you've forsaken your covenant. So what comes next? A chance to repent one last final time, and then what have we had since then in the world? Led by many of the really bad policies that this nation has had. You and I are in the middle of all this, so we have to be on alert right now.
Yep.
How much more do we need to be drawing close? How much more do we need to be hearing the voice of Yah? Because once it starts, it just won't stop. I mean,
Like Sandy, we better, well, you two, y'all stock up. We better be, that's just a little bit of it.
yeah.
Things are coming.
When there are no trucks, there is no more food.
Right.
It's gone. It's not it. There's nothing left. There will be
Water,
nothing except that which you can grow and that which you have stored. There will be nothing. And or you will be able to go to the merchants that might have supplies, but it will cost.
Yep.
So
There's gonna be bartering.
so it will definitely
Need
be.
water,
But that's just one aspect of
filters.
troubling times, of that foaming rage of Hasatan, as he knows his time is drawing
Yes.
short.
Very good.
And so it will come with food issues, economic issues, war issues. I mean, it'll hit us in the area that things that we take for granted, lights and air conditioning and running water and all of that. We need to take in consideration
You're not
what
gonna-
happens if it all turns off. Worst case scenario, or if it's intermittent, going to a full blackout. Who knows? But this is a time where we have to look at these. Let's look at Romans 5:1-5. I think is what Joe said. Therefore, having been justified by faith, we have peace, shalom, with Yah through our Lord Messiah Yeshua, through whom also we have obtained our introduction by faith into this grace, in which we stand, and we exult in hope of the glory of Yah. And not only this, but we also exult in our tribulations, knowing that tribulation brings about perseverance, and perseverance, proven character, and proven character, hope. And hope does not disappoint, because the love of Yah has been poured out into our hearts through the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, who was given to us. That was a great contribution, Joe. That's an excellent, excellent passage. So, so apparently, if we actually really want to look at it, we have to have the wilderness experience. We have to have trouble, like
To
Pastor
prepare
Sandy
us,
was
yes.
saying, because if without it, there is no
We'd be going
exercise.
along like normal.
We have no exercise of our faith, and if there and our spiritual muscles will be, will be powerless. It'll be like one who's been sitting in a hospital bed in a coma for 6 months. When they come out of the coma, are they going to be able to walk right away? We have to have resistance in order to keep us strong. You have to be moving around just to stay limber. My dad, 2 years in the nursing facility. No physical therapy. His joints were stiff because they had no movement. So why do you think we get these things? Why do we have the
It's a
trials?
warning.
Why do we have the trials?
Get
But think
ready.
about, we're that generation.
Yes.
So think about all that the Father has input into us. Is it enough? Our generation we are standing on so many shoulders of those who have gone before us, that it has so prepared us to live in this generation. So, what will we be birthing?
We're on isn't that word prefaces, wouldn't that,
Precipice.
that's what we're on.
The
Is
precipice?
that the right word?
Could be, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
I believe.
You're using the word correctly.
Okay.
Yes. Are we on the precipice there? Are we almost there? Reminds me of the hike in Norway. There was it's a beautiful, you can look it up. Look up Pulpit Rock in Norway. And it's a beautiful, beautiful, like this rock that protrudes off the side of a mountain. And so it comes flat out, and then it it drops down, but it angles back. It looks like a pulpit. It's like 1,000 feet above the fjord below. And so look it up, Pulpit Rock in Norway. It's called Preikestolen. And in Norwegian.
Say that again.
Preikestolen.
10 times fast, no, I'm just kidding.
Preikestolen. We would make at least one, maybe two hikes there every summer.
Who's we?
My family, our family would go up there at least once a summer. It seems like many years. There's some years we didn't do it as a family, but I often would go with other people because it's a 2 to 3 hour hike. Up, keep going, hike through boulders and all these glaciers and snow. Well, not glaciers, but a lot of times in the middle of summer, the snow was still up in some of those areas.
Wow.
And then you would hike around the corner of this mountain, and the next thing you would see, yeah, there it is. Yeah, see, you walk around, hike around the edge. So here you come up the whole backside there, and you come around to the edge, and there's you're at the top. And show everybody what that looks like.
I am, I'm just getting it.
And
Oh, wow, can you imagine me?
You were hiking that, look.
Ooh, that shoulder was in
you come around that, you'd come around that edge, and you'd see the Pulpit Rock. You're just like, whoa, check that out. And you get up on there. Sometimes the wind was blowing pretty good too, because you're up there on top of a mountain, and you go right up to the
Hey,
edge.
so girls, you want to
It's
climb
like,
that?
like
I don't think so.
Sandy, would you like to go right to the edge and look over?
No,
No.
dear. That kind of makes Paladar Canyon look sick.
I went to Colorado, went up that thing, never again.
I'm hard enough
My
time.
last climb.
Yeah.
Right.
So the point that I'm wanting to make here is that it was so beautiful, but it took effort. It was
Yes.
tribulation
Oh, that's good, yeah.
to make the hike. I mean, I'm telling you, if one was not in shape and you made that hike, because you got to work 2 to 3 hours up, and then it's 2 to 3 hours back to the parking
You'd
area.
have, somebody'd have to carry you down like you did your son when he was 5.
Yeah, and you would hike through some of the most beautiful forests and streams, and I mean, just amazing. But it was work, it was effort. But when you got there, it was so worth it.
And see, that's
Did
what's
you
gonna
go
be-
out on the edge and look down?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
I haven't put my feet over the edge.
Oh, I
No,
would
not
have
over the
been
edge, I'd get
saying,
wet.
get away from there, John.
Actually, I remember one of the first times I went up there, I'd get on, I'm not getting that close, I'd get on my belly and crawl over to look over the edge.
I wouldn't even.
So, yeah, all right, so.
But you can look back on that as the adventure and God.
Yeah, so, or if you wanted to, this is for the rest of you that don't want to hike, you can take a boat from Stavanger, and from Stavanger.
Stavanger.
Okay, yeah, and you can take a boat from Stavanger, and then you would, it's like a 3 or 4 hour boat ride, because you got to go through the different fjords and work your way all the way up to it, and you could get down, and we did take the boat one time. It was just kind of a different experience, and then we looked up, and it was so far up there you couldn't hardly even see that it was a pulpit.
Wow.
I
But it's
only do
beautiful, absolutely
boats that
beautiful.
don't go where there's water.
Huh?
I only do boats where they don't go where there's water.
Boats where there is no water. Okay, yeah, like in the showroom. That's a good place for the boat.
That'd be where I'd head, is to the water.
So.
Used to.
So we have this picture of Israel entering the Promised Land. We have the picture of the first coming of Messiah, and we have lastly this picture, this 40 years, this image of 40, the time of trouble, of testing, maybe a probationary period, which ends with the age with Yeshua returning. Okay, let's take my keys off. So, what about this idea of the firstborn? Because it was the firstborn in the wilderness that actually entered the land. Only 2 from the prior generation entered the land. Isn't it interesting, too, that now we know the story by why Joshua and Caleb were the 2 that entered in, why they were allowed, but they had to have somebody lead them in. They could have the entire Joshua and Caleb, they were well aged by this time. And just think, what would have happened if they had not survived? I mean, y'all would have supplied someone, I'm sure, in the middle of all that, but someone that had to understand the first generation in order to bring that second generation in. Someone who knew the first generation and all the pitfalls and the trials and tribulations that they didn't work out, and so they died in the wilderness, but would also have the understanding of those that were being raised in the wilderness. Why is it so important to be raised in the wilderness?
Because you're raised without the influence of the world.
Because Egypt is no longer the current events around them. It is, now you still have to deal with parents that are dealing with Egypt, but you're learning a whole new way of life. I mean, think about our own kids. Or maybe our own parents. Where we are as a generation as compared to our parents' generation. Are we in the same place as them? Are
No.
we going around the same mountain, or did we move?
Yes, I'm in the same mountain with my parents.
Well, there are a few exceptions. There are a few exceptions.
Usually that's not the,
No.
Everything that my parents installed in me, even though I rebelled early in my life, thank the Father that at 19, I started to take those things into heart. And then I said, this isn't enough. Because at 19, I started asking people. I probably asked my mom. I asked my mom a lot of questions. She's like, I don't know, you just study that out. That's why Mom did that to me a lot. Study that out. I said, okay, I'm going to do that. I asked my pastors, how come we're not like the first century?
They said,
And they said, well, because they really didn't give me an answer. Nothing that was, that was memorable.
sin. That's
We
why.
have to, but where I am in my faith today has a lot to do with the generations before my parents. But not only that, what about, hold on to that thought. What about those that went before us?
My grandmother.
In the
Yeah.
Azusa Street revival,
Mhm.
that awakening. Then what about the prior awakenings that hit the United States?
Amy Simple McPherson.
Amy Simple McPherson.
Mm-hmm.
What happened in the 50s? Those things, and then in the 60s, and the charismatic movement, and the prophetic movement, and all these different things, they had an impact on me. What did they all cause me to do? They caused me to press in and to love y'all and to worship Him with everything that's within me and to know the truth. Did you realize that even in the prophetic movement, what do they say? The Word is working mightily in me. Well, what was the Word? And I know that there's been abuses of it, and I know that there's a string
There's
of
abuses in
truth.
everything.
That's right. There's
So you can't point that
this
out.
thread of truth. I can because
I mean-
the thread of truth was what drove me. It's
Right.
like, okay, here's all this stuff, but I found this thread of truth, and the thread of truth took us all the way into the Torah, into where we are today, and connecting all the dots. And why do we have all the revelations, the awakenings that we've had in the past? Because they're supposed to accumulate together in this generation for us to love y'all in an elevated and an exorbitant way. Not just to be a people that simply come in and to say, oh, this is the only part that I want. No, it's to broaden the spectrum of our love for the Messiah.
Level to level.
Tammy.
Also, because Joshua and Caleb had such strong faith, by them going into the promised land, God showed that those who remain faithful get rewarded.
There you go.
Yep.
There you go. That's excellent. Those that remain faithful are rewarded. And that's what they did. After they went and said, hey, I don't care if there's giants, we can take this land. Why? Because Yah said it. The seed of Yah's word was already in gestation in them, birthing something. They knew that Yah is true, and what He says is true, and every man's a liar. That's what they understood. That's the principle.
And was it Caleb technically from the whosoever's? He wasn't directly linked to a tribe
Right.
originally,
Yeah.
but he became linked to a tribe?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Caleb, which means dog.
No.
It's
okay.
faithful. Faithful dog.
Actually,
And he's the one that took where the biggest number, the portion that he asked for had the biggest giants. when they crossed over. He wanted the land of the giants because he knew God would take care of it.
They had big houses. That was a good place. Let's get these guys out. I like their house. No, I'm just kidding.
But he knew God would help take care
Yeah,
of it.
no fear. No fear. Wow.
Do you know it wasn't even 40 years ago that giants here, not to get on the rabbit trail again, but I like rabbit trails. But there was people like in the early 1900s that were 8 foot tall, okay? I've seen
7,
it.
8 foot, yeah, they call it giantism.
So you know somehow that seed was probably, somehow.
They blame it on the overproduction of growth hormones.
Oh, is that it? All I know is they were around.
So yeah, you see the pictures.
Stupid people.
You see some pictures, really big guys. Yeah.
Well, the
But-
giants are the reason why the Anasazis had their dwellings in the cliffs where they're at. So
And
the
we've
giants
got-
couldn't get them from below or from the top.
Yeah, like the Hopi Indians. Like
The DNA of those giants they were never wiped out. They still exist.
That's what I think.
But that DNA still is existing. It just looks different. If we're looking for the same form, you can.
By the way, I want to say this, because Caleb shows that faith, Joshua shows this faith, and they weren't afraid of the giants. They were ready to go in and take the land. How about this thought? Do you ever think that these people that are in the ruling positions of power are so big that, what chance do we have to stand against them? Well, guess what?
We see ourselves as grasshoppers.
Yeah, against these people.
Yeah, but look at what a large number of grasshoppers can do.
That's good.
Yeah, that's really good.
That's good,
So they
Kim.
can devastate. They can
Yeah.
certainly devastate. That's really good. Good point. And that's why we need to see ourselves as who y'all created as. And I don't, I may not have the education, connections, power, money, whatever these guys have, but guess what? Then y'all and I make a majority. And
Yeah.
if one can put 1,000 to flight, then what about all of us together?
And he went for the humble, okay?
Right.
I mean, they were special to him.
Yeah, he uses the natural world to
Yes.
teach lessons, even though these people are big and mighty in power, they
And
can
there's
still be
probably-
brought down by
I
horde
mean,
of grasshoppers.
and there's very good people out there that are tall, but that's still,
I don't think we should look for giants that are just tall. I think Yah, when he shows us his word, because the giant, the Nephilim, the flood came to wipe out those offspring, but yet there were still more. And Nimrod became a Nephilim, almost like that. And the giants we look at today may not be, remember, there were 430-foot giants at one point.
wow.
So the giants,
remember that.
and they shrunk down, but the giants may not be the height, because I don't think that's what we're looking at. We're looking for the giants by the fruit that they
Well,
bring
yeah.
forth, by what they're doing. And maybe the giants are still occupying the roles of leadership in the lands. And yet, we say, we sort of side with the majority of Israel, saying, oh, what can we do against these people? Instead of the two saying, they're nothing, let's go for it. Because there are giants, but I don't think we should look for stature and height. I think we need to look at the fruit and the source and
Well, yeah,
where
that's-
because they are in power.
Yeah, that's the bottom line, yes.
So we were talking about Israel in the wilderness for 40 years, Yeshua 40 days in the wilderness, and what about 40 jubilees? 40 jubilee. What is 40 jubilees? Well, jubilee we talked about last week was 50 years. It's not 49 years. It's 50 years. Just so you know, the rabbis changed things. So Orthodox, Pharisee, that lineage changed things. We need to understand that a jubilee is 50 years. Okay, so now that we know that, and we understand this, that clarity, because a lot of times we're like, we link to a lot of these things and didn't ever settle right, and you say, well, they said it's 49 years, and then you start the first year, and then the first year is the 50th year, the 49th year is the 50th. They start doing all that, the manipulation. 50 years is 50 years. Okay, so
Amen.
40 times 50 is what?
200?
2,000, right? 40 times 50 is, because
There's only two zeros.
it's 20, but this
20.
4 times 5 is 20. So here you got 2,000, right? 40 times 50,
Okay.
okay?
I went and checked on the calculator.
Yeah, see? Yeah, we got fact checkers in the room, all right, so I like
No,
that.
it's called math check.
I do need math checkers, I'll tell you that. And
By
so,
the way, on the Nephilim, Joe posted in there are Nephilim that are small as well in the physical, but the Nephilim are a mixed seed and we are to test.
and that is really important as well, because the Nephilims were before and after the flood. So they may not have the physical stature.
Isn't that what I said?
That is what you
Yeah.
said. But they don't have the
This is in
physical
the nutshell, it's
statute.
the small.
So it also makes you think the people who are at large, in particular ruling elite,
Could be the Nephilim song.
are
Yes.
mixed
Yes.
seed, right?
Well, I think I said
I think so.
Yes, you did.
Okay, so, all
Okay.
right, so now we have this 2,000. Well, what is it about 2,000? Yeshua was in the wilderness for 40 days, and how many years has it been since the time of Yeshua? 2,000 years. We've had 40 Jubilees. 40 Jubilees. So do you think there's a connection there? What about
Wouldn't
this?
it way over 2,000 by now? I've been here in 2,000 for
It's,
20 years, 30 years.
okay. They have said
I've always wondered
historically.
about that.
Okay, they say this historically. I put it up for question, that Yeshua's ministry was approximately 3 years. I like to say it's a 1-year ministry, because I think that makes more sense to me. But there's others that say he had a 3-year ministry. I don't know. Somehow then they say he died at age 33.
Yeah, heard that.
Well, I wonder, why are they putting a Masonic number and tying that to Yeshua? 33. And if you understand what 33 is, a 33-degree Mason, you know what a 33-degree Mason is? Once they move into that, they actually find out what the whole reason of Masonry is all connected to, and that is that you make your allegiance and a vow to Hasatan.
But you really have
Lucifer.
from the beginning.
You have from the beginning, but it all becomes clear at 33. At 33. So, do you ever wonder why they say Yeshua died at he was age 33? Well, I think there's some bad influence in the middle of all that. Okay, just
Would
saying.
think, yeah.
That's why it makes sense to me. He started his ministry at age 30. Man may have completed, he was 31. And not to tie it to that. Okay, that's just me. Y'all check it out and you come up to your own conclusions. With that, how about this? What about these 40s connected to the age of man? 3 times 40 equals, how about you math people? Can you get it to me? 120? 120, and that's what we're given in Genesis 6:3, that number of man's years on the earth would be 120. Now, is that each one of us is going to live to 120 years old?
No.
Roughly? And yet we see people in the Bible that, lived to
Live past
120,
that.
right? How old? Jacob was what, 126? So, maybe,
Today, we do have some that are over 100 years old today.
yeah. So it's like, okay, that's an interesting point. But as we've studied out in the past, I want to remind everybody is that could this not be a 120 jubilees? In other words, that we have this number here, 40 times 50, gives us 40 jubilees. 40 jubilees gives us 2,000 years. Well, if Yeshua, by the way, let's say he was crucified in the year in the year 33. Well, then 2,000 years from the year 33 is what year?
2033.
2033. So 2,000 years is that we're in the window.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the window. So that's why it makes sense that this has been, that there's been 40 jubilees since the time of Messiah. But if we also look at the time of this 40 times 3 is 120, 120 jubilees, how much is 120 times 50? The age of man is 6,000.
Ooh.
How'd you get to 6,000 again?
120 times 50? Yeah, 120 times.
The age of man is 120, and so it's always been said that's 120 jubilees.
And if you use, now if you go, I think there's a really good calendar, you can actually put in dates in the cycle thing, it's DSS.com, DSS being Dead Sea Scrolls. There's a calendar. And you can actually put in the Gregorian dates and put it in there. And the completion of 6,000 years is that we're actually at 50. Let me look it up. I'll look it up and I forget. So I'm going to look it up for everybody online. Go there right now.
Good.
DSScalendar.org. DSScalendar.org. And today is the 7th day of the 3rd month. 7th day of the 3rd month. And it is the year 5949. We're in the year 5949. So according to the Dead Sea Scroll calendar, or the priestly calendar, or the Zadok calendar, or the Enoch calendar, whatever you want to use, we're in the year 5949. So what would that tell you? Would that not tell you, one, that there's one more Jubilee left? Now, I don't want to wait for a full Jubilee, but I really do think that Matthew 24 says that unless the days were cut short, no man would survive. And if you
That's
look,
good.
that there's such an acceleration of things right now on the earth, is that, so it's not like we have to, do some manipulation on the calendar itself in terms of the number of days, the 1,260 days, 1,290 days, and all this sort of stuff. I think you can pretty much say that the cut short is not from the beginning of the time, and I know I've taught this. You cut it short from the beginning, so the only thing you're doing is experience the last part of the 1,260 days. I don't really, I think that's a very interesting thing. One person teaches that, and I've actually gone into that thought and that theory before. But I really think the cut short has to do with we won't fully experience the last Jubilee because Messiah will come.
Hallelujah.
And just remember, you say, well, wait a minute, that's 6,000 years. What about the 7,000 years? Because 6,000 begins the 7th millennial. Because if you're a Hebrew and you're born in year 1. So this would be the millennial reign of Messiah, actually. So it would be day 7. You say 6,000, well, it's day 7.
Sure.
Okay?
Man, that's close.
Hope I didn't lose you, but anyway, there you go. That's very interesting. You can actually go in there. There's a converter. You can go back and look on the Enoch calendar or the Zadok calendar. You can go and put in there as a calculator and find out what day you were born on that calendar.
Wow.
You can go back using this and know when Yeshua was on the earth. You can go back. And now, what did they teach in the Dead Sea Scrolls? Is why did the Orthodox change this? Why did the Pharisees change the calendar? Hillel, solidified it in the 3rd century, 2nd, 3rd century. Why did they do that? And then now they're year, what is it, 5784? It's 5784. Well, if they follow that calendar, they're off by 250 years. You think, well, how do you come up to the end of the age and it's 5784? I mean, there's lots of confusion that makes. Why? Because they're controlling something in order to take it away from that priestly lineage, which comes from the rod of Aaron.
They want the site again, please.
It is DSScalendar.org. DSScalendar.org. Yeah, he's got some really interesting things. There's he has their calendar actually set up as a sundial, and where there's concentric circles, and it's broken into the weekly, the monthly, the annual weekly, monthly cycles, the annual cycles. Then it goes into like the Shemitah cycles. Then it goes into the Jubilee cycles. And then it goes into there's another branch, and I'd have to go back and look at it. I think it's like a 500-year cycle, and then it goes into the 1,000-year cycles. Mm-hmm. So it's very interesting. And if you follow that, instead of the block type calendar, it really makes really good sense. It's a really good way to find out where am I in the course of this year, because here's all my weekly days, the weekly Shabbats, the different months, the quarters of the year. It's very interesting, and
Yeah, it is.
you'll always know where you're at. You will always know where you're at. We've been trained to follow block calendars for so long, but this tells you where you are in the midst of all of the millenniums. So, very cool. All right, let me go back over here. So I would have to say that if we're kind of looking at, we put these pieces together, so there's been 40 Jubilees since the time of Messiah. That if we're looking at, that the days of man is 120. So therefore, we have that connection that we're coming very, very close to the time of the end of the 6,000 years. Doesn't it really tell you this, that we have this picture of understanding where we are prophetically in the timeline?
Yeah, that's why you need.
Right? Now I'll tell you this. Now, Ken Johnson has some really good stuff. I disagree with him on a lot of different things. Primarily is the thing about the rapture. He's very much in line with the rapture. But I will say this, and which he says can happen at any point in time, and you know that's the typical rapture teaching. But if you kind of delete some of the things he's talking about, and then you look at it as well, that could fit for the second Exodus, the greater Exodus. That would make sense. A time where where the bride is sequestered in the wilderness with the Most High, with the Messiah, with the bridegroom, right? And you could probably even say for 1 year before the Messiah goes to war. So some other thoughts just for you to chew on. You know, we really don't know until we actually get there and we start to, so we actually see it. But we can postulate and we can kind of look at it, and every day that we get closer, there's more revelation, there's more understanding, and the better we look at it. So let's go on.
Fills your faith too.
So we're in the final stage of that prophetic declaration, and we understand that Yeshua is the firstborn. Remember, we were talking about our son, and Yeshua being the firstborn, and how this second generation, because all these guys are going to die in the wilderness. This is the first generation. They're going to die, but the first generation, they're like the firstborn out of Egypt, will survive and go into the land. And Yeshua, the firstborn of all creation, he was the Torah scroll. He's the Torah made flesh on the earth. By the way, did you know this? Fun fact, that, remember we were talking about 248? Remember 248 connects us with Bamidbar and Rechem. Rechem meaning the womb or the belly. And Abraham, 248, it has to do with that. Guess what? There are 248 columns in the Torah scrolls.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
All right?
Like a column on a book page?
Like on a book page. You see how you got columns in your Bible?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they have columns in the Torah scrolls. There's
Oh,
248 columns in each Torah scroll. 248 connecting us back to Abraham and connecting us back to that which proceeds from the mouth of Yah in the wilderness, right? Mouth is, Bamidbar also means mouth. So we have a command. Yahweh says to number Israel. Number Israel. How much time we have? We've got a little bit of time. So let's look at some words. Cool. Any thoughts so far? Have I lost anybody?
Not so.
Have I bored you?
No, it's been interesting. You can never not learn enough and repeat it.
Remember, 70, eyeing. What are we perceiving? What are we seeing here? What are we connecting to? So we're going to talk about this numbering idea. And there's 3 different words that are used here. They're sum, number, and pole. Sum, number, and pole. So these are some of the words I use. So sum, number, by which our English versions named this book, and pole. You know, like poll? Like you're going to take a poll?
Yeah.
How many people agree that our current president is a... Okay, never mind. Okay.
You have friends for Senate, you're good.
Okay. Sum. The word for sum is rosh. Rosh. Rosh infers, we talk about it a lot. What is rosh? Besides sum. How about first, or the head, or the summit, the top, the chief? So kind of, it can also mean to shake. Oh, you know, what do you do to your protein drink when you put all your stuff together? You shake it up.
First thing in the
It caused foaming and turmoil. Remember, that was one of the words that we had related to Bamidbar. Okay, so Rosh. If you rearrange those letters, you can get the word Asher. Asher. Looks like a tribe, right? Because you've got the aleph and the sheen. There's the aleph and the sheen. And the resh. It's just put in a different order. So you get the word Asher. What does Asher mean?
Happy.
It does mean happy. It means to be blessed. It also means to go straight or to go forward. And it's relating to a person's walk. So Asher, he must have been one of those kids that are just happy. Just that whole attitude carried him forward. I mean, just think about that. Isn't it great to have a kid that has, rather than the kid that might be mopey and complaining all the time, but this one is just happy, just fun loving, going straight. Isn't that how our walk should be?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a happy type of just good attitude moving forward in our life, or do we just carry everything we feel and it's expressed in every type of relationship connection that we are encountering?
I know people.
What is it? Are we just happy? Jackie always comes in with a smile and a laugh. I'll tell you that, right? See, there you
I
go.
got y'all close, is that what-
Laughs again. See, you got to have a good smile on your face to move
Okay.
forward. So the number is mispar. Now, it's written like it sounds like mikpar, but that's actually an S sound. Mispar is number, and it's a samic, not a sheen. So it's a samic. That's why they differentiated in the English with the C. But it's mispar, the sound of mispar, and it means number or to count, and its root is safar. Safar. Remember that, like the C, the samic. That's its root with a fe, and the resh. So that's where it comes from. It means to count or to reckon, scribe or tell. Scribe is the word of Yah. Now we're talking about in the wilderness, how that voice, that mouth, that what's coming out, is it the words that are coming out, and is it being written, inscribed upon our heart? Are we taking it to heart? Or do we just say, you know what, I'll just kind of, I'll just be a connoisseur of a buffet of things. And I'll take a little bit of that, none of that, a lot of that. And are we a connoisseur? Are we like eating at a buffet and where we get to choose? Or do we have a master chef that has laid out a 5-course meal that everything in the meal is
Come to his
delectable,
table,
and we
fellow.
want to eat every bit of every plate? I'm telling you, an appetizer, and what about the entree? I mean, it's got a meat, and it's set up on some rice or some quinoa or some orzo or something like that, and then it's got some asparagus and maybe this beautiful salad that came with it, and maybe a bowl of soup, and it's like, I'm so full, but it's so good, I want to eat more of it. Are we sitting at the table of a top chef, or are we just going down to Furr's Cafeteria and we're just a connoisseur of, I don't like those canned green beans, they put pork in it, so I won't have any of that, but I'm going to go after the fried okra and the fried chicken and the fried fish and the fried, whatever. It's like, well, what's the difference? What's the difference? Okay, but I'd rather have a chef's meal.
Me too.
Wouldn't you? Yeah.
Healthier and it
Okay.
tastes better.
So we are. So that means it means mispar. The root of that is coming from safar, which means to count, reckon, scribe, or tell. Guess where that is etymologically connected? There's a word connection. Safar. How about this word? Or actually, let me put it this way. I'm just going to write it like this way. Like I use the Sefer version as we're going through Enoch. And Sefer, Safar, they're connected. There's this connection. What does Sefer mean? What was that? Scroll, book. Yeah, it's a scroll or a book. So now, again, scribe, scroll, scribe, scrolls. Are we an open book before the Father? Or are we allowing Him to write on our hearts? And so remember what we said, there was 48 columns in the Sefer Torah, in the Sefer, the book of the Torah, and which is 5 books, maybe one. 248 columns, 248 columns, and in each column there are 42 lines. 42 lines. 42 lines. I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. Okay, so let's keep those in mind. Remember we're talking about mispar. That's associated with 380. 380. So mispar is 380, which is also related to another word. Remember, we're using 380 as a pivot. It's connecting this one word to another word. It's connected with another word called lashon. Lashon, the word for the tongue. The tongue. Now, it's the tongue can be used for good or for evil, right? And 380 connects us also with the dimensions of Noah's Ark. So that's interesting. So that's all coming out of this word number, mispar, safar, sefer, 248 columns, 42 lines. We also have this number 380 that's connecting this mispar, which means, again, it means to number or count, and it connects us with the tongue, and so Moses being told to take account, take a number. Then pole. The word for pole is gul, goleth. Gul, goleth. I'm going to go ahead. I'll hopefully got all this written down. I'm going to take that out so you can see. Gul, goleth. Pole. The Hebrew word for pole is gul, goleth. Gul, goleth. Does that sound like something familiar? Like Golgotha? it has an interesting connection. The Gulgaleth, it actually has a value of 466, so we're going to pivot there. We're going to see what else it's connected to. But it has a meaning of skull or head. Interesting how Rosh also means head. Skull, head, a place for a census, or, for example, counting of heads. Counting of heads. So the root of the word, this is the word with the root of Golgotha, the place where Yeshua, of course, was executed. It has 466, and 466, we're going to pivot from Golgoleth, has this Hebrew word, sut. 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 It's the Samic Vav Tav, and what does that mean? It means garment. So we've pivoted to the garment. It's connected. 466 is the gematria for Gulgaleth, which is the same value as sut, which means garment. Are y'all with me?
Yes.
Okay? And it's connected. Now this is a kind of a word play, because this is a samic. That's a samic. You know how a samic and a seen sheen, they can seen has the same sound as samic, okay? But in the Paleo-Hebrew, it means two totally different things. But etymologically, you can say it because of the sound of it. Sut can be connected to Seth. Seth. Who is Seth? So Seth is spelt with a sheen as opposed to a samic, but the sound of it allows us to kind of draw another connection by chance. Who is Seth? How about the second son of Adam? He was the son after Abel. This is to say, who is Cain, of course. And you're like, well, wasn't Cain a son? Well, maybe we've got some other things to be studying about there, but that's another whole totally different subject. So Seth. So he's a second son of Adam, and his name means appoint another. Appoint another. Thus, through Seth, the lineage would be reckoned. Oh. If through Seth the lineage would be reckoned, it wouldn't be through Cain. So therefore he would be considered the second son of Adam. Well, so Adam came first, has a first son that was murdered, so there's a second son.
Place them.
And now we can maybe have this whole idea of this messianic connection, that Messiah would come first and then would come again. So, all right, so we've talked a lot. Let's draw some conclusions. Okay? How are we doing on time? Oh, we've got lots of time. All right.
It's amazing how y'all works. I mean, it really is amazing.
Yeah.
And he's laid it out for us.
It's so interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's look at this. We're going to put all these clues. We've talked about a whole bunch of different things. Summarizing. From the first, the beginning, the shaking of creation. So think about Rosh. Also, it means head and sheep, but it means to shake as well. So from the beginning of creation, the head of creation, the start of creation, the shaking of creation, because what was going on in creation, at the beginning of creation, I don't know how old the world is, but we do know that the earth was without form and void. There was something that had happened. There must have been some, maybe, there was a major catastrophe and the whole earth was covered by waters. It was the waters of chaos. How does that look? I don't know. Was there something before the chaos of Genesis 1? I don't know. I just like to say, let's talk about what we do know. All right, so From the beginning,
Silence.
from the first, the shaking of creation, the path or walk, remember, asher, path or walk. The shaking of creation, the path or walk would be written in Torah, and its tongue or its seed. Wait a minute, there's more. The shaking of creation, the path or walk would be written in Torah, and its tongue or seed hidden in the ark. By the one who would exchange his garments, be executed and appointed to reckon or settle the accounts of she who was numbered.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're talking about with right here. All of these definitions that I just gave you gives us a prophetic picture. It's like, well, they're just counting numbers, and it's so boring, and like they kept repeating themselves. Asher had this, and Zebulun had this, and Reuben had... No! Because we have just been given the description of the bride. Let me read this again to you. From the beginning, or from the first, the shaking of creation, the path or walk would be written in Torah, and its tongue or seed hidden in the ark. By the one who would exchange his garments, be executed and appointed to reckon or settle the accounts of she who was numbered. Wow. Why did Yah tell Moses to number Israel? Because he's bringing all the things in. He said, guys, you are part of this creation, and out of this shaking and the turmoil and the chaos and the confusion from the void that was, I am building a house, and from all of this, I'm exchanging. You're still going to have the dirty garments, but I'm going to come and I'm going to exchange my garment for yours. Think about that. What did Yeshua do? He exchanged his garment for our filthy rags.
Yeah.
Right?
But that makes sense now why he numbered them all.
And
they used to have to be numbered and stuff. I never understood that till right now when you just said this.
And exchange his garment, and then he would exchange his garments, being executed and appointed to reckon or settle the accounts of she who is numbered. Did you know our days are numbered?
Yes.
Why were we talking about our days? Our days are 120 years. The age of mankind is 120 jubilees. Our days are numbered on this earth. Individually, we don't know. Praise Yah that we've been able to live the life expanse that we have, so we've been able to come into Torah, and we've been able to see our families raised and our grandchildren and all of these different connections. We have been able to see prophecy fulfilled before our very
Yes.
eyes. We've had that privilege,
Yes, and
and
speak
yet in all of this, it's He reckoned our days and settled our accounts before Him so that we would not be without. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, that's.
Well, that's almost worth ending right there, but we still have some time. We do.
But I mean, it's amazing.
The word, to give a little bit more meaning to this, there's this word. Okay, so I'm going to pull all this down. By the way, remember our son. That would be Yeshua the Messiah, the Son of Yah. Okay, so keep that in mind. But the ark, the word for ark, as I was talking about the ark, and like that number that was the dimensions of the ark, 380 was the dimensions of the ark. We have the word ark is tebah. Or you could say tebah. I don't know what the vowel points are. And that word, that's the word, it has the tav. If you were to break this down, that would be like a prefix. So this is, I know this only because of my study notes, but because I'm not a Hebrew grammar scholar, okay? Just so you know, I just trust the people that I'm gleaning information from. And it's in the third person future tense. So think about third person future tense. the tav, third person future tense. Future tense. So it's talking about something ahead of us. That's revealing
On
something
the way.
that's revealed from our past. So
Yes.
third person future tense. And then the bait, hey, right there is the word, it spells ba, which means in her, in her. So you shall be in her. You shall be in her. So it's talking about the ark. So we remember what I said here. The shaking of creation, the path of walk, would be written in Torah, and its seed hidden in the ark, hidden in her. Hidden in her. You shall be in her. That's so the path of walk is written in Torah, and that seed is hidden in her. Are we the seed of Yah?
Yes.
Is He the seed that's hidden in the Sefer,
Yes.
in the Torah?
Yeah.
And then it's ours that we're discovering that right now. So now that makes a little bit more sense that the path or walk would be hidden. Whose path or walk? Our path and walk?
Both.
And Yeshua's path and walk is hidden. That's why I like Psalms 110. Because it talks about the Melchizedek, that Yahweh said to my Yahweh, sit at my right hand. And that he would be in the order of Melchizedek. And that he would go by the brook and drink along the way. What did he do? He went down to the River Jordan. He got dipped.
Mhm.
That whole verse, that last verse in Psalm 110 doesn't make sense until I broke it down in the Hebrew. I was like, that really makes sense. Because it's a prophetic look. Why did Yeshua have to go down to the Jordan? To be baptized by John? Well, to fulfill Scripture. But to fulfill Psalm 110, because he would go by the brook, by the way, which is the River Jordan at flood stage, at the time of Passover, to be immersed, John overseeing him as the high priest, the legitimate high priest from the Zadokite priesthood lineage, and he would oversee the immersion of Yeshua, and he said, this is the Son of Yah. Right? So Yeshua went in and immersed. He took a drink by the brook along the way, the River Jordan that rubs at, my version says brook. It's a river. It's another translation choice that I thought was poor. And so check that out for yourself. Psalm 110. The Hebrew language. It's amazing, isn't it?
Mhm.
So it's revealing far more than the counting of heads, but rather that Yahweh is telling Moshe to raise their heads. Now, we've talked about that in prior Torah portions. Raise the heads of the people. In other words, what's he counting? He's counting their skulls, their heads. Raise the heads of the people. What happens when someone, when like one who is in authority, you think about a king and a servant, comes before the king with their eyes looking down and they're bowed before them, and then the king reaches out his hand gently under their chin, lifts their head, says, look up. What does that just do to that person? Isn't it?
Shows them their worth, sort of.
Oh, it's like that king is saying, I value you.
Mhm.
Don't be shamed or ashamed to come before me. Look up. So Luke 21:28 gives us a version. Lift up your head, your redemption draws nigh. He doesn't say look down and be humbled because of the coming of Yahweh, because of our redemption. He says lift up your head. He's saying he's lifting up our heads. This whole idea to raise their heads. And this has been the plan from the beginning of creation. Mm-hmm. Everything in life is to push our head down, to look down at the ground, to humble us. And we do. Honestly, we go through life, these hard knocks of life humbles us. But it's not so that we're broken, but so that we are positioned in the rightful position that we look to our Savior.
Yes.
Right? The plan of creation from the beginning is to raise us up out of our sorrows and to put us and set us upon the rock and to wash all that miry clay off of us and to walk with us. That is the whole purpose of Yah. And especially in the wilderness, because he said, I will go before you. He said, this time's going to come, you're going to be driven out of the land, but guess what? I'm going to go before you and prepare
See the
the
shepherd.
place for you. Right?
Yes.
And he also goes before us to prepare us to return to the land. So he's always going before us, and he'll also be with us in the wilderness.
Amen.
Every bit along the way. Bereshit. Let's write some more words on the board. Are y'all getting something out of this?
Yes.
In the wilderness. Bereshit. So, I know we've studied this word before, but let's write it on the board. Okay, there's the phonetic spelling of Bereshit. It has, it's broken up into a couple different parts. These Hebrew words are made up of other words because you have the roots, you have the root of the word, and sometimes if it's a long word like this, you've got multiple words built into this one. Now what does this mean? Typically we call it Genesis, or in the beginning, right? We tend to define it that way, but what is... so I'm going to connect some dots. This first part with the Beit Resh. Beit Resh. Beit Resh, bear. It can mean sun. And then we have right here this E. It's written, we have E in English, but it's an aleph and a sheen. We have an aleph and a sheen. So in Bereshit, we have a Beit Resh, and then we have an aleph sheen. Aleph, I spelled that wrong. Aleph, like aleph. Aleph. Okay. Or, okay, I know. I always like to use pH. Why do we use pH for F or F for pH? I don't know. Why do we have two different sounds? Why do we write it both ways? I don't know. I didn't. Why does English have to be so weird?
Yeah.
Okay. So aleph sheen. Aleph sheen means there is one, a foundation, beginning. So it means there is one foundation. There is one foundation, beginning. Okay? Aleph sheen is a word that stands for, it means there is one, a foundation, a beginning. So Beit Resh is a sun. This is there is one foundation, beginning. Then we have out of this as well, we have, so that was the aleph sheen, but you can also pull out the sheen yod tav. Sheen yod tav. Well, what does that give us? How about Seth? We just talked about Seth, right? It was because we had that connection with what pulled Golgoleth and some of the breakdown there with the gematria connection of 466 for Sut, which gives us the etymological sounding connection with Seth. And here we get in Bereshit, we get Seth. And Seth, again, means garment. And who was to be numbered? The garment who was to be numbered? The gematria of Bereshit is 920. And it's connected with the phrase, okay, y'all stick, this is really good, we're going to finish with this. Beit Hamalkut. Beit Hamalkut. Okay, well that's cool. Bereshit is the same number as Beit Hamalkut, which means the house of the kingdom.
Boo.
So why do we start with Bereshit, and how does that connect? Because we are actually connected all of this together now with the numbering and the polling and all of these different things about the raising of the heads and whose head is raised. It's those who are in the house of the kingdom.
Hallelujah.
And those numbers pivot. Do you see how those pivot? We've talked about it for several weeks. Different numbers mean different things. It's like I get lost in the numbers, but wait a minute. The numbers are pivots. It's kind of like a seesaw or a merry-go-round. How about a merry-go-round where you have a center pivot point and connected to it is all the different places where everybody
Like a
gets
circle.
on that ride, and each little horsey that people get on has its own unique characteristics to it. They all can be named different names, but all those different names pivot around that single numerical digit, and then it says, oh, this means this. This connects with that. So think about it like where we're living out here in the Panhandle, where they use the big pivot irrigation systems, and they have all the different nozzles that are on it, and it's watering this beautiful field. It turns green. They grow their crops. They're growing the wheat. They're growing the corn, and all of that connection. The very seed that goes into the ground. And so what's being numbered? That farmer is numbering his field. Right, Twyla? It's like, what type of crop? How much am I going to yield out of this field? Don't you think that the Father's looking at us right now and says, what is the house of the kingdom going to yield? How? And that's this whole numbering of the people. What type of fruit have we yielded before Yah? There was an exchange. At the beginning, there's a numbering. At the end, there's a numbering. The numbers are a little bit different. Some increased in numbers, and there's 5 tribes that decreased in numbers. But through the course of all that, it's very important because the house of the kingdom is being counted and accounted for. Because why? The son of the king would come in and say, these are the ones I'm exchanging my garment with. All right.
Hallelujah.
Good?
That was good.
All right.
That was good.
All right.
Baby
Hope you
thing.
enjoyed that. Thank you all for joining us online as well. We will be back here on the Life of Worship Ministries channel at 3 p.m. for our encounter service with some praise and worship, followed by the message. So hope you all can come back for that. We would love to have you. Give us a thumbs up on the way out. Also remember online in your giving, your tithes, offerings, love gifts, whatever. It helps us to fund this ministry to make it continue to go forth, and we certainly appreciate your financial help. So Shabbat Shalom to everyone. Until next time.